G'day. Welcome to episode number 11 of the Cold Blooded Contributions podcast. We're your hosts, the Ipers. I'm Scott Iper. With me is my wife, Ty Iper. This podcast will bring to you people in the hobby who have made an impact on us creatively, with it artistically, with data, improving husbandry, taking incredible photos. Today we are stoked to have with us Pierre. How are you, Pierre?
Yes, hi. Hello, my name is Pierre de Chabannes.
I appreciate you pronouncing your surname for me because I was expecting to butcher it. So thank you for that, Pierre. Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm 43 years young and I was born in Paris, France in 1981. It's still a good time to be around, I guess. I've been a wildlife photographer for about 23 years now and created my project that I now call Pure Wildlife, ACEE. For the past, back in 2006, and my website's been running for more than 10 years now with educational documents that I've created. And besides that, I'm also the zoology, taxonomy, conservation advisor, and field producer for the National Geographic Photo Arc. I think I pretty much said it all.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. So whereabouts did you grow up? You said you come from Paris. Did you grow up in Paris or were you in a more rural setting?
Yeah, I spent the first 13 years of my life in Paris, in central Paris, and then moved on to Versailles, to where the castle is. I could actually see it from my window then. And I stayed there another 20 years. So I'm pretty much a city guy. And when I met my wife, I decided that was enough and I would be the one to reach her where she was. So I left Paris and went to the countryside. But I grew up in Paris, definitely.
Lovely.
Yeah, it's an amazing city, really. No offense for any other cities, but so far as I went around the world, Paris stands out as being one of the most beautiful for sure. But it has its own challenges, of course, but my goodness, what a beautiful city. I mean, every time I go, I'm still amazed. Every time, to this day. I've known that city for 43 years, and I'm still in awe when I go there.
So can you go herping in Paris? When you were growing up in Paris, were you able to go herping there? Or not really, not in the city itself? It's too urbanised.
My herping actually started by accident, but in Paris, no, there's not too much to do for herping unless you're looking for an escaped corn snake from a terrarium somewhere. But otherwise, no, forget it. Nothing like that is going to happen in Paris. You won't find any vipers, maybe some wall lizards somewhere, but Paris is not a good place for herping. But outside, if you drive like an hour away from Paris, then you start seeing things, including vipers. In the summer, we were lucky. We still have that house, by the way. My grandfather bought a big cabin in the mountains in the Southern Alps. And in the summer, we would all go there. And I was exposed very early, my first year of life already, to the evil vipers that keep biting people, that are very dangerous, that we have to avoid at all costs. And of course, as a kid, what do you like to do when people tell you, oh my God, it's bad, it's scary? Well, of course, you want to see it. So I kept looking for them as much as I could. And I found them eventually. That's how I got into herping, actually, at the beginning, is looking for vipers. But as I didn't know anything, I was looking for them during the day. I didn't find them, of course, until I started looking early morning and late afternoon. And then I ended up finding some.
Accident.
What species of viper?
Yeah. Asp viper.
Okay, yeah.
Probably Atra subspecies from the French mountains, yeah.
How large are they in compared to, say, Beris, or are they similar in size or a little bit larger? They're quite toxic for the European vipers, aren't they, the aspis?
Yeah, they're quite toxic, but it's mostly local symptoms. Mm-hmm. You rarely have systemic envenomation, but you can still have a pretty hard allergic reaction to the bites. That can be life-threatening, definitely. Yeah. And they're not so big, actually, because our cabin is quite high in the mountains, is 1,500 meters above sea level. Mm-hmm. So over there, the snakes tend to be quite smaller than the ones that you find in the lower areas. As far as I noticed, the aspic vipers, Vipera aspis that I saw over there, were barely more than 60 centimeters, 70 maximum. Mm-hmm. So they were quite small. And I saw much bigger ones in the lowlands. Maybe I just didn't see big ones out there in the mountains. I don't know, but they were not that big.
Fantastic.
When you were a kid, Pierre, how did you answer the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I answered it in so many different ways because for me, animals at first, that was a subject of evening book reading so that I could calm down and slowly put myself into sleeping mode. When I was a kid, my parents would read me animal books and show me the pictures because that was easy to do. You didn't have to do much reading. You just have to show me the pictures and explain me. And we had all these big time life books. So that fueled my interest from the start, from a very young age. But the thing is, I always saw animals for the first 10 years of my life. I only saw it as a reading hobby. It was not more than that. So if you asked me what I wanted to do, I wanted to be a truck driver, then I wanted to be a subway driver, then I wanted to be a drummer, then I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be all kinds of things, but it never occurred to me before quite late in my life that I could actually do that job that I'm doing now. I kept animal photography and everything linked to animals as a hobby until about 20 years ago.
So in other words, you didn't actually expect to be doing what you're doing now.
No, absolutely not. I didn't expect that. But to be honest, I didn't expect anything that happened in my life to happen. Everything, everything happened either by accident or by coincidences, but it ended up happening. So I guess the common thread to that is it's me, basically. But that's it, because when you look at my resume, there's absolutely nothing indicating that I would be ready to do any job that I did. It's all self-taught, really.
Is that how ACEE came about, or is that a different story?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
That's absolutely the same story. I didn't expect at all to have a website anytime. I started when I went to Southeast Asia in 2005 and 6 for the first 2 times, got photos, and I noticed that all the animal enthusiasts from Europe that I was chatting with on forums, on message boards at this time, they were quite amazed by the photos. They were quite amazed by the species I saw, although at this time my photos were far from good, but still they were amazed. So I thought to myself, well, why not put a photo gallery together? So I cried to one of my friends who was knowledgeable in internet things, and I told him, please build me a photo gallery. He did it. So I got my photo gallery that way, and I started uploading things, and then I started meeting people I didn't know about, including people who were pretty famous in the wildlife conservation and zoology domains. And they were telling me, wow, you saw that species? Where did you see it? How many? I was like, oh my God, that has to be a big thing. So I kept on going. And then people asked me, though, do you have any more information? Have you seen them in the wild and everything? So I started to pay more attention than that. That's how it came about, It's building up slowly. But until 2000, I didn't even want to work in that field. I was busy. I was a drummer. I was a professional drummer. So why would I switch fields? I was having a great time drumming.
But wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Not too many people in the hobby knows that.
There you go. It's incredible how many herpos that are musicians. There's quite a few other people that are guitarists, and there's a couple of other drummers as well. How many species of animals have you photographed, do you think?
I'm somewhere above 16,000 species and subspecies together, because I'm counting subspecies as well as single units.
Yeah. So
species and subspecies altogether, about 16,000.
So you'd have to have a pretty significant system so you can actually filter to find a set image that you're chasing of a certain species. So is that something that you spend a lot of time setting up initially?
And I still set it up. It's still in the process. It's a never-ending process, really, because I have a master list, like an Excel file, where I have all the subspecies and species that I photographed listed together with some kind of color coding that tells me if I have to reshoot because the photo is crap or if it's usable. And also another color coding as has the species been posted on my website already or not. So that way I don't have to look for things all the time. Everything is in the Excel file. Mm-hmm. And I also have the shooting locations so that I know where I've taken that photo. If I need to find it very quickly, I know where it is.
Yeah.
I don't have to spend hours browsing. And then I have 3 different data storage systems.
Yeah.
One online in case, but I hardly use that one. I have 2 really big hard drives where all my originals are kept. And I also have my main computer that has a big hard drive, built-in hard drive, where I keep sized down photos so that these ones can be used immediately if I have to send a photo to someone or post it online. They can be used right at a moment's notice. So that's my system basically, but it's never ending because I've been to Southeast Asia twice this year already, and I'm going to Asia again in September. And I still haven't finished editing the photos of the first Asian trip that I did this year. I'm still adding stuff and I'm still struggling editing. By the end of the year, I'll probably be all good. But right now, I'm still adding species from April.
There's just not enough time in the day, is there?
No, I mean, there's not enough days and not enough hours in the day to do this, but it's okay. I accept that and I just keep on going. And whenever I'll be done, I'll be done. But I've come to terms now that I'm getting older to the fact that I just can't do everything myself. So I just go at my pace. And whenever I finally get rich enough to hire people to help me, then it will go fast.
What's been your favorite animal to photograph and why?
I have two answers to that one. Joel Sartori, my boss, the PhotoArc photographer, has given me a great answer once when I asked him. And I like this answer. He says, my favorite animal is the next one, because that's the one you got to worry about. What's the next animal going to be like? So I like this answer, but I have a fondness for snakes. You know that. That's how we came to be in contact. I have a fondness for snakes, especially venomous snakes. All the viperid family, rattlesnakes and everything, they have such an attitude. I just love photographing them. They're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. All the details on the scales, the eyes, everything. That's just amazing. When I'm in the wild, I absolutely also love photographing birds and butterflies. These are also great, tough, but great subjects.
Most difficult?
Yeah, really difficult because butterflies especially, they're quite wary. Some of them will just sit there with their wings open, but most of them, you just make one step in their direction and they're gone. So it can be quite tricky, but it's okay. Reptiles are quite easy, except the ones who run away as far from you as they can. That's usually monitors. Monitors are very good at that.
And they're fast.
Oh, yeah. Way too fast for me.
I've got a lot of tail shots there, not many decent ones.
We have to work on it when I come to Australia.
Most
I need some of the species there. Varanus glibopalma.
I photographed one of those about 2 months ago.
That's good.
So
that's good.
They're a beautiful species.
So it can be done.
It can be done.
It can be done. So I will do it.
Yeah.
I will do it.
Fair enough.
Then I will do it.
Have you ever been bitten or suffered an injury while taking photos or chasing an image?
Well, bitten by a venomous snake, never. And I'm still hoping to keep that record clean for as long as I live. Now, bitten by animals or injured? Injured, definitely yes, because I don't have a very good balance. And usually when I need to stand in very awkward positions or whatever, I will usually end up in trouble. I fell quite often in the field, but it's okay. I still manage my way through all this, but yeah, injured in that way, yes, but I've never broken a bone or suffered a really bad injury that had to be treated right away. So far, the worst bite that I suffered in the field was actually a leech bite, so it's not that bad. But there's some really small leeches in Borneo on the Mount Kinabalu forest that are they're black and red. They're very tiny. They're not even 5 centimeters long, but these ones will bleed you to death, really. And 2 of them were attached to my ankle. I didn't even feel them. And at some point I looked at my ankle. There was 1 leech attached, so I removed it gently and put it back. And when we were in the car after hiking and getting back to the hotel, I felt my sock was soaked. And I was like, well, it's okay. I mean, I walked in mud, so probably some water or some mud got into my shoe. No big deal. Come to the hotel, get my shoes off. My sock was literally dripping with blood. And my ankle looked like it had been butchered, completely butchered. And just because of 2 tiny punctures, my wife nearly fainted. I nearly fainted as well. We were like, my goodness, I mean, what happened? At first, I thought I overlooked some venomous snake bite or whatever, or some really bad injury. But when we cleaned the blood, it was only 2 tiny puncture marks from the leeches.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the worst thing I have suffered so far. I still don't know what species it is.
Chances are it's probably not described. I mean, there's so many species of anilids and stuff like that aren't described. And to even get them to the right family is usually doing pretty well.
Exactly. But I still need to photograph it because, of course, I was too busy and I didn't photograph it in time. But next time I'm going to try to make a donation of my body again in exchange for a good leech photo.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way most people get them, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, I got 2 species that way.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not a
Yeah.
big leech fan.
Exactly. Well, I'm not a particular leech fan, but I don't hate them either. And they're animals, so they go in my
Yeah.
project just as anything else. So if I can get good leech pictures, that's good. Then I can feature them.
Definitely. Have you
Yeah.
photographed anything that's unfortunately become extinct?
Joel, yes. On my side, not yet, but it's about to be extinct. It's the Bornean subspecies of the Sumatran rhino.
Yeah.
Right now, as we know, there's only one live specimen that we know of, really. Only one. And it's in human care. It's on Borneo. It's in Kalimantan right now, so Indonesian side of Borneo. And nothing is being done other than keeping her in a pen somewhere. So she's growing old. And there's none anywhere else. I mean, in the wild, it hasn't been observed since then. And I'm convinced that this one is going to go extinct, so it will definitely be a last record. And the same goes for the northern white rhino. There's only one left.
Yeah.
So those two are likely going to be the first extinct species in my list.
I know with the northern white rhinos, they've harvested either sperm or eggs,
Yeah.
and I believe have they done the same thing with the Sumatran rhino?
No, I'm not sure because it's quite complicated to work with Sumatran rhinos and Bornean rhinos in general. Because the Indonesian government's involved and they're pretty much keeping that to themselves. And I'm really not sure what kind of work they're doing with it. I've heard lots of different stories about it that, let's say, doesn't give me much hope.
Yeah.
For now. I'm hoping things will change for the better, but we'll see.
What's the longest time you spent getting a photo of an animal? What animal was it?
The longest time it took for me to successfully get one photo of an animal that I've been looking for was 7 years. That was the Bornean bristlehead. It's a bird. And it's a forest bird endemic to Borneo. I've looked for that sucker for years and years and years and coming back to Borneo over and over again in habitats where we knew the species was there. We knew it was here. Never showed up. Never heard it till 2023. And I hired a guide again. We went to the field and we saw it.
Yeah.
It took 7 years. But otherwise, I can just stay hours and hours and even days in the same spot until I get things. So far, that has been my nemesis for 7 years. But I happily took it out of my nemesis list now.
I'm sure the next time you're in the right habitat in Borneo, you'll probably see another one.
Now it's likely to be like a garden bird.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We've all had
and you know, everywhere. Yeah, the worst that have happened to me with that bird is that last time I came, before I got it, I was like in the warrior mode, spending 3 days in the field just looking for that one. I took time off work to get there, 3 days. And I meet an American guy, a very nice guy, a photographer, huge photo equipment. I mean, so we were comparing our lenses and everything. And he was telling me, oh, look, I got that bird yesterday. I don't know what that is. This is my first day in the field. Man, looks good. And he shows me the bristlehead. What? And I mean, he got it. He didn't even know what that was. And he got it just when he got there. It took him like 5 minutes of looking to get that bird. And of course, when I got there, gone.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened with a primate. He showed me another primate I was also looking for to photograph, and I still haven't seen it. And he got it on the same day as the bristlehead. You cannot predict what wildlife is going to do. Sometimes you just go to the habitat and it's not there. You got to start again.
When we were in Europe, I was really hoping to see a fire salamander. That was very high on my list. We were in the right spot. We tried, but wasn't quite the right time of year. That was too conducive to them moving and that. But at the same time, I mean, look, it is what it is. It's just an excuse to go back, isn't it? To go and have a look. Not like you need an excuse to go to Europe.
In our place, there's supposed to be lots of fire salamanders.
Yeah.
I only saw it once. Only once. It's disappearing now. It's going down very, very fast. You can talk to friends of mine, Dr. Philipp Wagner from Germany, who's also a reptile and amphibian conservation specialist. And he will tell you about the fire salamander. It's now part of, I think it's either the Studbook Foundation or the citizen conservation programs. They put it there because some populations are really going down fast. So I'm not surprised that you didn't see it, actually.
Yeah.
It's getting so difficult to see in certain places now.
Well, they do suffer from bee sale, don't they? They're one of those species that is really being significantly impacted. I suppose this is the status of things that we're in, the importance of things like these photo libraries to have these images and these records of these animals of various populations, so that later on, if those specimens are unobtainable to see in the field, we've at least got specimens and photos of them in life that we can use as comparisons with the preserved specimens that happen to be sitting in museum collections.
True. Yeah, definitely. I do that. I started as a collector pretty much, but now I'm mostly doing this for education purposes, for education and memories, because I realized when I was 20 plus years old and I started, I was not really into collecting memories. For me, it didn't make sense. I was just living my life. And now that I'm 40, I realized, oh my God, I saw that when I was 20 years younger and I haven't documented it. And I feel sorry that I cannot go back to it. It makes me want to document things, not only for education, but also for people and for myself to just look at what we have or what we had or what we saw at that time that we can't see anymore. In 2005, I went to peninsular Malaysia. There's a beautiful river somewhere not far from Malacca, actually, where I photographed a really nice kingfisher. I mean, it was a common species, but the river is gone now, and it's completely dried out. Finished. That habitat is lost. And I wish I had a photo of that river, of that habitat, just to remember how it was at the time, because it looked really beautiful. So I'm trying to do that now with everything, including animals. So that's part of the mission I have.
I remember looking at some of the deforestation rates in some of these countries where they're being changed over to palm oil and stuff like that. Superficially, it still looks half decent, and you've got some species that can utilise those palm oil plantations, but generally speaking, most of the diversity is gone. It's incredible. True. We're talking football fields and rugby fields that are gone every second in some of these places. Where you could see something 5 years ago is now effectively a green wasteland.
Yeah. We called it a green desert, green wasteland, definitely. In Malaysia and Borneo particularly, the palm oil is slowing down now, but there are other worries, other concerns. I've switched my attention from, Borneo, I still love going to that place. It's one of my favorite places to go. But I've switched my attention to Philippines because, especially in southern Philippines, all the logging and palm oil companies that used to operate in Sumatra and Borneo are now operating there. And they're damaging hectares and hectares of rainforest without anybody knowing about this. I try these days, and whenever I meet conservation people and zoo people, I try to highlight the fate of Mindanao because there's a bunch of species there that we have no idea about. Last time I went, I photographed a tree agama, a tree dragon species that's unknown to science. So there are lots of things there that are absolutely not known to science, and they will go and they will disappear really fast because no one is paying attention to the deforestation rate on this island. Very sad story.
You've spoken about so many countries in Southeast Asia and obviously time in Europe. How many countries have you visited, and which one was your favourite?
How many, I don't know, because I visited quite a lot, but I visited all countries in Southeast Asia, all of them.
Yep.
Except Brunei. Brunei is the last one that I need to visit. Apart from that, Papua New Guinea is still Australasia, so it's different.
Yeah.
I don't know, more than 20 countries for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe even 30. But I have to say my favorite countries are Philippines and Malaysia. Malaysia probably comes first, and then Philippines comes right after. I love these countries. I love being there. I love the people. I love everything, the food, the atmosphere, culture. I have many, many friends there. Now, some of my Malayan friends, every time I come to their country, they say, hey, welcome to your second home. And I feel like, yeah, that's exactly it. At some point, I was even considering actually owning a house in Malaysia or a condo or something. But so far, it didn't happen. It's still in the back of my mind somewhere. Or maybe when I retire, when I get old and rich, I can do that.
How does your wife handle all the time away?
It's been rough sometimes. She still doesn't like it, which is quite understandable. She understands that's part of my job. She understands that it's part of my mission, and she accepts it. And at the same time, we try our best to keep connected as much as we can, and I try my best to bring her with me every time we can. So we at least have one trip in Southeast Asia every year together where she is actually joining me when I'm working. That way she can be around and she can experience what I'm experiencing. And she's happy to connect with me that way. We try our best to save money so that she can come at least once a year with me. Also, we have various ways to connect. I try my best to be available every night for at least 30 minutes and call her so that we hear each other, we see each other if the signal's good enough for a webcam, but at least we hear each other, we can talk. There's the classic, how are you? How's your day going? What's going on at home and everything? How are the pets? We also try to connect in other fun ways, like we play Pokemon Go together. It's
cool.
It's a stupid game. Yeah, but the thing is, it actually offers us a way to catch up while being in a fun setup. That eases the burden of the distance and being away for a long time. But still, when I'm gone 1 month, she doesn't like it. I understand that for sure.
It is a long time to be separated.
Yeah, the worst I did was more than 2 months. It was 2 months and 1 week. That was really, really, really long. But I'm trying not to do that again. I'm trying to limit myself to 1 month maximum. And I'm also trying whenever I can, whenever I feel it's going to be longer or 1 month, then I'm always trying to have her come.
Yep.
So that way we try our best to stick together. But we're good. She accepts it. She knows it. And she knows I'm fundraising for more expeditions. So she knows I'm going to be away some more. I'm so glad she's understanding, because that's a big key to my success. That I know I have her support, and I try to give as much as I can in return to keep her support and keep her happy in any way I can.
I firmly believe with Scott and I that absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah, we have two different ways to see it. My wife likes being together, as much as possible. And I'm more of a loner. I like having my me time,
Yep.
So when I go travel, it's my work time. And when I'm working, I can't focus on my wife. I focus on my work. Then when I'm done working, then I focus on my wife, because I can truly focus on her. I'm more that kind of person. But that doesn't mean because I'm not focusing that I don't love her. She knows that. She perfectly knows that. These past 3 years have been really, really intense with my travel schedule, where I've spent more times abroad than at home.
Wow.
I could even be eligible for a removal of my French citizenship, actually. So I have to be careful.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how bad I am.
Yeah, wow.
So
Is there a law or something that you have to be there for a certain amount of time to be
6
qualified
months.
as a citizen? Oh, okay.
6 months. Yeah, so I'm not qualified at this time.
Wow.
what sort of camera equipment do you use? What is your brand?
Oh, well, it's disappointing for a few photographers when I tell them that I used my brand out of a complete accident, complete randomness. I use Canon.
Yep.
I use Canon equipment.
Woohoo!
And not because I loved it or whatever, but because that was the first camera that was given to me. I was given the Canon 20D when I was 20 years old as a gift. It was an old used one. And I just bought one lens after the other to try to build my equipment slowly but surely. And so why would I switch now? I have to rebuy everything. I have to sell everything. It would be too expensive. So I just stick to Canon.
I'm a Canon girl. Scott's a Nikon.
I'm not having any of this Canon versus Nikon war, because anyways, I didn't choose. Canon chose me. So, okay. Like the fate had decided I would be Canon. So I'm Canon. I'm okay with it. It's good. It takes good photos. I'm happy. When I press the thing, it takes a photo. That's what I've known.
I think the reality of it is simply that both push each other, whether it be Nikon or Canon. They all push each other to that next level.
Absolutely.
And for me, it's so difficult to use a Canon because everything is not quite the same as how it is in the menus in the Nikon. You still have the capability to do everything, but it's not the same. I'm sure it'd be the same if you pick up a Nikon. True. You can still take the photos. You just got to figure out how to do it.
Joel Sartori uses Nikon, actually. And once I picked his camera, tried to take a photo. It took me like 10 minutes to figure out how to take a photo with that goddamn thing. I took a photo at the end. It was completely shitty, but still, I took a photo. But when Joel uses his Nikon camera, it's amazing. I just trust my equipment. What I just try to do is buy the equipment that will be most useful for me in the field and the equipment that will be more versatile. I used to think, and I made that mistake for quite a long time, actually, that the lens quality far outweighs the quality of the camera body. But Joel told me that it was a pretty big mistake that I made, because you can have the best lens, but if your camera body is not good, you're going to get an average picture at best. It's not going to be really nice.
Yeah.
But if you have a really, really good camera body, no matter how powerful, how good that lens is, if you are good at your craft, you'll get a good photo. So I switched that a few years ago, where I now no longer look for the highest lens quality, but I look for a really, really good camera body. And it changed my photo completely. It's day and night. And I no longer look for only for 2.8 lenses, these super expensive white lenses from Canon. I don't even use those anymore. My photo quality has actually improved.
So what body are you running now?
7D Mark R6 Mark II, I think.
Yeah.
It's mirrorless.
Yeah, okay.
These bodies are absolutely brilliant.
The low light performance in the mirrorless bodies is something to behold, isn't it?
Completely. I was talking with a photographer that has a YouTube channel and is doing lots of testing, and he's been doing that for years. And he was telling me that these mirrorless cameras actually exceed the regular DSLR in their capacity to get good shots, and in every circumstances faster. Now it's come to a point where actually mirrorless are getting better than DSLR.
When I started taking photos, I was using an SLR, and then moved up. When I did the transition from slide film across to digital, went into the DSLR, and you still have that mirror and you still have that reflex action. And when you're looking through the viewfinder, you're still looking at the actual subject as opposed to a digital image of the subject, which is what you've got now, as I believe, with these mirrorless versions.
True.
I wonder what you get and how I'm going to get that around in my head to be able to deal with that. But at the same time, it's like everything, you adapt eventually.
Yeah, true. But the Canon cameras are interesting in the fact that they do have a mirror. They still have a mirror, but they have a mirrorless technology of taking photos. So you still see the regular subject, actually.
Oh,
but,
okay.
You can still see the regular subject.
So you can still
use
use
I mean, it's a kind of hybrid, I think.
So you're still using the optical as you'd usually
kind
do,
of.
but where the image is taken from the sensor, where it goes through the lens, is still going through to where it needs to go onto the sensor.
Yeah.
Okay.
True.
Cool.
I mean, that's as far as I know. I may be completely wrong, but that's as far as I know with my camera, at least. But I really love this camera. Now I actually have a much harder time going back to regular DSLR because they're not fast enough. They're not reactive enough. I mean, they're slow. When I need to get a photo of a bird flying, for example, most of my old DSLR that used to be top-notch, really, I find them being way too slow. With my R6, I was taking tropic birds flying all around when I was in Micronesia last winter. That was no problem. In any position, that was no problem at all. I mean, focus, take a photo immediately. In terms of technology, they're really advanced.
So the focus tracking is incredible. So that would make it easy doing your butterflies as well.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, I have photos of butterflies flying, actually, with an 800 millimeter zoom lens. So that tells you how precise that thing can be.
Podcast just got very expensive here, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So that 800 lens that you're using, is the Canon system the same as the Nikon, where you've got vibration reduction within the lens as well as the body?
Yeah. Yeah, but this is actually quite an alien of a lens, I could say, because I've never seen a lens like that. For 800 millimeters, it's super light. I mean, I don't know if you can believe it when I'm telling you that most, if not all of my pictures taken with that lens are handheld.
Yeah.
I don't even use a tripod with this lens. And I get perfectly sharp photos with it. It's no problem. Even if birds flying, I get them with the 800. I mean, that's a life changer. It opens completely new possibilities.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's 800 f11. So everyone is super scared when I say, oh, f11, 800. Oh, my God. Welcome, blurry pictures. Hello, lack of light.
Yeah.
And no, it's perfect. I mean, I photographed birds in the dark rainforest with that lens.
Okay.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's crazy. It's made for the new R cameras only. Cannot use them with the old DSLR. But I'm now to a point where I'm thinking of upgrading that lens. Instead of having an 800 only, which is the fixed lens, it's not the zoom lens.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to go for the 200 to 800 zoom lens which is a bit more expensive, but roughly the same kind of light. It's a f9, I think, not f11, but f9. It would be more convenient for me rather than having to switch lenses if I want to get something closer. So
I was about to say,
I'm thinking about that.
Trying to shoot something with a little bit of size from 5 or 6 meters away with an 800 mil is going to be a bit of a task.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Can you give our listeners some tips in regards to improving their photography, as I've just stolen Ty's question there?
I mean, I'm not a good technician. I'm more of an instinct kind of photographer. I just snapshot as much as I can. When you take animal photos, which is my primary subject, really what you have to do is you have to take multiple shots. Don't just take one shot, because there's so many reasons that things could go wrong. When you have one position, just get at least 10 frames of it, because you never know. Anything can screw up a photo very easily when you're in the wild. You have the dust at the wrong place, the animals just twitches, or you get one part of it out of focus. So I always take multiple shots of the same position, and then I edit, and I only keep 1 or 2 of the best ones. The other ones, I just dump them. Otherwise, the basics of photography are out there for everyone for free now with all the YouTube channels and everything, and they're quite relevant, really. I mean, they will get you everywhere. But Joel told me, and that's something that I believe is really important now, and it's really changing my view on photography. Joel basically told me about the importance of a good background, because when we're photographing in a zoo, for example, when you have wires as a background, it just makes the photo horrible. No matter how good looking the animal is, the photo is horrible. And you can't have a really positive message with that photo, because what you see behind is bars. I mean, we all understand the purpose of a zoo. We know that for conservation, it's important. Zoos are doing very important things, and I don't deny that. But when you're looking at aesthetics for a photo, a zoo cage is horrible. It's just not good. It's just not a good setup, no matter how you like zoos. So I don't take pictures in zoos much anymore. I used to do lots of that, but I don't do it unless I have a natural background behind the animal, or something that looks good enough so it's not bars, or it's not something that looks bad. So I really encourage people to focus more about what's the background of the photo going to be, because we know the animal looks good. I mean, that's why you want to photograph it. If it looked bad, you wouldn't want to photograph it. So we know the animal looks good. But now look at the rest of the photo. I mean, if what you have behind is like crowded and takes the focus out of the animal, then it's probably not a good background. If what you have behind looks sad or dark or crappy, it's not a good background. I've taken photos of amazingly rare birds, and the background was a wall covered with bird poop. My photos were horrible, but I only have those. So I'm still using them, but I'm not proud of these photos anymore, because now I realize, yeah, okay, it's a rare bird, but geez, the photos look awful.
Yeah.
So that's what I would encourage people to do, is pay more attention to the background, because at the end, this is what will make your picture look good.
Yeah. So you're a field producer and advisor on the Photo Arc project that is done by National Geographic. Can you tell us how you got into that position?
Oh, it's a long story, but I'll make it short for you. Basically, I have friends in the US that I've met in 2010, Joseph Lindholm and his wife, Natalie. They're from Texas, they're from Dallas, and they used to be working in Dallas World Aquarium. It's a really impressive collection of fish, birds, reptiles, everything. And they had me come over, and we really, really got close friends, and they told me they were amazed by the photos I was doing and by the fact that I knew so many species, including species that hardly anyone has seen, at that time at least. Joseph always told me that, well, if he heard of anything like a position being available or someone who's doing the project and needing help, he would recommend me. So I was feeling thankful, and then I went back to France. Nothing happened until I get an email in 2015 from Joel himself. I didn't know him at the time, but when I Googled the name of the guy, I was like, oh, wow, he's a big guy. And he sent me an email, horribly translated by Google Translate. So I looked for the original version of that email, and in which he was telling me that my friend Joseph from Dallas had recommended me to him. And so we met in France with Joel. He went with his family on holidays. We met there, and he told me, look, I'm on holidays, but I would still like to work for maybe 3-4 days and then be on holiday with my family. Can you please help me find places to shoot animals? And he showed me how he would do it and everything. I ended up finding a bird park for him and a few private collections, mostly birds, plus snake photos at my apartment. And on the last bird collection, we broke the record of the number of birds he photographed in a single day. And when we got back in the car, I was driving and I was guzzling Red Bull after Red Bull to keep myself awake. It was like 11 p.m. We were all like tired, struggling to keep our eyes open. And I had a 3 hours drive on the expressway to get him back to Paris. And Joel had his computer and was telling me, look, I think I'm in trouble because we photographed so many bird species. I have no idea what they are. I can have my friends at home from US zoos ID them for me, but in the meantime, I still have to at least sort them out. So even if it's a French word, can you please help me name them so I can get done with it? I told him, look, whenever the road is straight and there's no one around us, just flash your screen at me. I'll take a quick glance and I try to tell you if I know what that is. And we did, and I successfully ID'd to subspecies level, and along with IUCN status and everything, all the 63 species that he photographed that day. And then he told me, okay, now I know why your friend recommended you to me, and I'm definitely going to have you hired.
Do you know how the idea of the photo arc came about? The original concept?
Yeah, it came about because Joel was a field photographer for Nat Geo. He has many top stories, macaws, grizzly bears, and everything. His wife fell sick in 2006, I believe, 5 or 6, breast cancer, really bad one. And she was completely grounded at home, and they had 3 kids, and she couldn't take care of them because she was badly sick. She was in bed the whole time. So Joel had to stay home and could not go in the field anymore. So he became a complete family man, like a houseman. And when his wife felt better, thankfully she's now completely cancer-free, he decided that he would try to spend a bit more time home. So he tried to look for ways to photograph animals differently than what he did. He lives in Lincoln, Nebraska, and there's a small place called Lincoln Children's Zoo right down the street where he lives, I think. And so he went there and he asked his friends at the zoo, please, do you have any animal that I could use for photography where I could just like experiment and the animal will not be scared and it will be okay? And they gave him naked mole rats for one day to play in the room in the zoo. And he decided to play around with the backgrounds and the lightings and everything and see how he could take like a full frame photo of that rat with nothing else than the rat. And that's how the photo art came about.
Wow.
So yeah, it started in 2006. And it's actually funny because Joel and I have many similarities. I mean, we started our project on the same year, 2006, and we are almost the same number of species nearly 20 years later.
Wow.
So yeah, it's fun. And now we work together, of course.
Surely you've got a big list of your wants. How do you work out, okay, this is the next species I'm really going after?
Well, for the arc, I'm going to have to disappoint you because we don't have a wanted list. We have a very, very short dream list of things that are super rare and that we would love to get, like the Sumatran striped rabbit or the vaquita or things like that. But these are almost impossible to reach. But we still have this in case they show up. Yeah. These would require all our attention. But what we do have, just as I have actually, a master list where we have all the species and subspecies we already photographed.
Yeah.
So what we usually will do is we will focus, rather than focus on the species, we will actually focus on the place. So for example, our last trip was Thailand and Vietnam. The reason that I switched my attention to Thailand for Joel is because I knew that in Thailand they had the last tiger subspecies that we needed to photograph for the photo arc, which is the Indo-Chinese tiger. I knew they had it, and I knew the zoo would be game to work with us. So I pitched that to Joel, and I told him, look, while we're in Thailand, it's not going to be enough for us to keep us busy for 2 weeks. But if we add a bit of Vietnam to it, then we will have enough to be busy, and we can still do some pretty good species in Vietnam, like the crested argus and so on. And we ended up having a 2.5-week trip where we shot the Indo-Chinese tiger, about 10 primates, all of them super rare, critically endangered. And we got lucky enough to go to a research station where we photographed more than 16 pit viper species, including some new to science. So that was really cool. So all this was absolutely unplanned before I went there. And that's the essence of my job, actually, is I'm paid to go search for things. And then I tell Joel, look, this is what I found. If we couple this with that, and if we make this program, then we have enough to justify spending 2 weeks in the field and get the species. And that's how it works. It's a really good job, actually, but it's very stressful as well because the whole organization of the trip is dependent on my work. So if I screw up or if I don't find anything, then there's no trip. and then the money is wasted. So we have to go again. So I need to get results. And so for Thailand, when I pitched Thailand to Joel, I knew I had to deliver that tiger. So the negotiations were really hard because I needed to make sure that the zoo will actually do the black and white backgrounds and that we could shoot the tiger in a backstage area without breaching security protocols, but still getting good photos of it. So it was quite tricky, but we did it.
Do you know how many animals have actually been photographed now for the Ark?
Sorry, say again.
Sorry.
How many animals?
Yeah, have been photographed for the Ark.
Almost 17,000 now. I think we're even past that mark.
Is that all types? So is that things like from insects and all life histories of different insects and amphibians and stuff like that as well? So you photograph juveniles, males, females, really try and represent the whole species itself?
Yeah, as much as we can. But we can only photograph what people have for us.
Yep.
So usually we try to document if they look different, really different, then we photograph life stages. Or we photograph sexes. If the differences are so insignificant that you have to use a microscope to spot them, then no, we don't photograph difference. Every animal that goes in the Ark, it's a really big logistics, lots of money, lots of time. So we need to make it worthwhile. We need to make sure that our efforts will give something that's usable and that we have a reason to spend that money and spend that time and hire this many people to actually come up with something. So we do our best to document as much as we can, but we have to have a reason to document it.
Yeah.
It's a new species. That's a good enough reason, of course.
Yeah.
But when we already have a species, if the male looks dramatically different from the female or vice versa, then it's good to document it.
And I suppose you take the same thing where species are sort of known to be, or very likely to be species complexes. You take images of each one of those localities where you can and things like that to get them on the back end when they eventually get described.
Yeah, exactly. We did that on this trip actually in Thailand because there are good chances that the banded crate, Bungarus fasciatus, is actually a species complex.
Mm-hmm.
There are very good chances to that. And same for the pit vipers. I mean, what we know as the white-lipped pit viper is likely a species complex.
Mm-hmm.
So I had Joel take different localities of these snakes, especially when I know that these localities are separated from each other by either mountains or a big river or something that's not passable.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the huge Annamite mountains that separate Vietnam from the rest of Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big enough geographical barrier to justify that probably the pit vipers on the left side of that mountain are likely going to be different than the pit vipers on the right side. Not for sure, but likely. So in that case, I will incitate Joel to photograph them.
Well, it's just like, Malaya Python reticulatus. There's probably 4 or 5 species sitting currently within reticulatus. Ophiophagus hanna, the king cobras are going to be split into 4 species.
And we have all of them.
You photographed the Filipino one?
Yeah, we photographed the Philippine one back in 2018, where the talks about the king cobra species or subspecies at that time was hardly ever mentioned. And it was like just coming out. And I told Joel, look, we were doing a documentary at that time for CBS for the famous 30 Minutes show. And the CBS cameras were here and they were looking for something dramatic to film. And I told them, look, the king cobra looks really different here than from the mainland. So maybe it could actually be something new. Would you actually like to photograph that king cobra with the CBS people filming so you have something dramatic, like the cobra hooding in front of you and everything? And they agreed. And that's how we got the Philippine king cobra.
That's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it is actually documented in the 30 Minutes CBS show. It's viewable, and you can see we documented the Palawan spitting cobra and the king cobra from the Philippines.
Fantastic. Is trying to sort out logistics the biggest challenge in your profession, do you think?
Yeah, the hardest part of the photo arc shooting, I mean, there's lots of hard parts actually, but yeah, the logistics is a big thing because we have more than 120 kilos of gear just for the photo arc alone. We're not even counting our luggage.
Wow.
And we have to travel with that. So that means we need a van, we need a translator. When you get on site and you have to photograph a tiger, You need to make sure you don't breach security protocols. You need to make sure that the keepers understand what you're going to do, that everybody understands that you're not going to harm the animal, because when we're set up huge lights everywhere, it looks like, oh my God, what will happen to my tiger?
Yeah.
And nothing bad will happen to it, and the tiger will just be fine. But we need you to understand that and to collaborate with us so that you can tell us what to do, what not to do.
Yeah.
And we can also tell you what we're hoping to get. So it's a team effort, you know. So that's on the shooting day. But at the same time, when I go to these places, it's to scout in preparation for the shooting, it's only me. So people don't necessarily understand. They see, oh, okay, this friendly guy who comes over and tells us National Geographic will come. Cool, we're game. And then I explain to them, I show them photos, and they're like, oh my goodness, what is this? All this is really challenging because most zoos have never gone through that process. When you photograph an animal in the zoo, they would usually tell you, go ahead, mate, there it is. Take a snap a shot, and that's good enough. I hardly been to any zoo where they would handle animals for me, and I don't want them to handle them anyways because I don't want to disturb the animals. Yeah. So having someone build a studio setup in the backstage exhibit of a tiger, that's something that's not really your ordinary day, you know.
Yeah.
Even in the zoo, you usually don't want to mess with those animals. So having to build a whole photo studio. And then you have to worry about the conditions, like is there going to be electricity? Because we have our lights, we need our lights to work, we need power. Where are we going to set up the computer so that we can ingest the photos and look at them to make sure that we're done? And all that, it's logistics, carrying the equipment, preparing everything so that when Joel gets there, he doesn't have to worry about, okay, will there actually be a studio set up for me? He knows that when I go there, when I tell him green light, we're going, he knows that when he gets there, the studio is there.
Yeah.
So that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, but it's worth it.
Yeah, for sure. What's the most unforgettable meal you've had while you're traveling?
The most unforgettable?
Yeah. Or forgettable, whichever way you want to put it.
Well, it was not with a photo arc, actually. I can share with you two moments, two bad ones, but they were pretty funny. The first one was when I was scouting Malaysia for Joel. He was not there, actually, so I was the only one who suffered that day. A good friend of mine who took me for a fish soup in a restaurant near Malacca. And the soup was huge. It was like a bathtub of soup, literally, with fish inside and everything. And they got like a very tiny bowl with a red liquid inside and with a super tiny spoon. And I saw my friend take the spoon and get some of that red liquid and put like 3 drops of that liquid in the bathtub. And I was like, okay, how is that going to make a difference? And I did the same. After tasting my soup, that was really good. And it was so spicy that I almost threw up after putting that red liquid inside. So, I mean, that literally crippled 3 days of my work.
Oh.
It was so bad that I was in pain. And I was only like 1 droplet of liquid in the bathtub. And that was enough to kill me. So
What it was?
I don't know. I don't remember. All I know is I was feeling so bad.
Yeah.
I was miserable. I couldn't sleep. It was terrible.
Sounds like a nuclear version
Wow.
of chili oil or something.
Yeah, that kind of a nuclear chili or whatever that was. But man, that was terrible. And the second experience we had actually happened to Joel himself. He often tells that story when he's speaking to audiences. Yeah. And we're in Philippines together. And we were invited to shoot on the private island of Semirara, which is south of Mindoro. And this island is all owned by a coal mine company. And we were invited to shoot there because they saved part of this island to be like a wildlife sanctuary with both captive breeding and wild animal monitoring. So pretty well done. So we went there and they had a canteen where we had lunch for free. And in that canteen was really nice looking corned beef that Joel had lots of it because he loves this. He had lots of that corned beef. I was right in the open for everyone to enjoy and under the aircon so it would stay kind of cold. But yeah, Joel had lots of corned beef. And the more the day goes and the more Joel starts feeling really bad. And he ended up throwing up. He was feeling so bad. His skin was see-through. That was,
God.
yeah, he felt so badly sick that, I mean, he would literally, in between shootings, we were shooting giant clams in the afternoon from a fishery on this island. They're breeding and repopulating giant clams throughout the Philippines. They had like 5 or 6 species of giant clams. So we were taking photos of the clams, and each time, while his daughter and I were changing the setups and putting the next clam in the tank, Joe was literally on the floor under the aircon, not moving, just trying to breathe. He was miserable because of the corned beef. So if ever you meet Joel, just bring the corned beef memory and you'll see him smile. And he'll tell you about it. And you can tell him it's me.
We'll make sure if he comes over, we'll give him a corned beef sandwich.
Yeah, exactly. Nice corned beef sandwich. He'll love it.
What's the most adventurous thing you've done while traveling?
You mean for the Ark or myself?
Either. Yeah.
That's a tough one, really, because for people in my village, just taking the plane is adventurous, you know. Just actually going to the airport is already an adventure for my neighbors.
Having 2 drops of that red liquid.
The most adventurous. Oh my God, that was like almost like a death sentence, you know. I've gone into rainforest alone whenever I knew that I would find my way. Of course, and when I don't know, I try not to go alone. This is always a bad idea. But yeah, that's adventurous, I guess. Going to Mount Kinabalu alone and trying to go around and look for wildlife on the road and in the trails nearby in Borneo. But probably the most adventurous was to actually go to Ponape Island in Micronesia.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was completely alone. And when I arrived, I was figuring out, okay, yeah, so it's a pre-touristy island, so there's going to be guides, nothing. So I had to start from scratch. The only hotel that was left with rooms were Chinese-owned a hotel. They spoke English, so I was glad they spoke English. And starting there, everything was an adventure. So how do I get a car? How do I go around? Where do I go? Because I was trying to speak with the Wildlife Conservation Office of Ponape. They had no freaking idea where to see any bird species. So how the hell do I find my way in there? So I had to basically guess my way, and that was probably the biggest adventure. I was lost. There was no signal.
Sometimes that's really satisfying, though, finding your own way in something like that. Especially
when you end up getting what you want. That's really satisfying. And I can tell you my ego was, yeah, man, we did it. But you know, yeah. Ponape was a very particular island for me because there's endemic birds, especially there's an endemic lorikeet, a small parakeet, that, I mean, you cannot find it anywhere else, really. And it's like a holy grail for most parrot lovers to see it live because it's not in collections anywhere in the world. So seeing it live and documenting it, when you look at the photos online, there are very few photos of it, really very few, and most of them are not so good. And I actually snapped a close-up shot.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that one, I'm still smiling when I remember that moment because, you know, I was on my own, literally struggling to find my way. And I was telling myself, okay, I'm just going to try to hear the screams and go where the screams come from. And I figured out by the side of the runway at the airport, there are some good trees. So I headed there and bingo.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but I still have to go back because I got all the skink species on this island, except the endemic one. So I need to go back to get this one. It's endemic to mossy forest, and there's nothing known. There's like one photo of it.
What genus is it?
It's called Emoya ponapea.
Yeah.
And the last field work that has been done was done by a school teacher on Ponape who went in the area where they occur and documented it and documented the habitat. And that was 15 years ago or something like this. So we don't know at all how the species is doing. I think it's data deficient on the IUCN. And at this moment, I'm trying to fundraise to get back to Ponape to actually thoroughly document this part of the island where the skink is. Because if anything happens, there's no other island where the skink occurs. So it will be gone. So I'm trying to find a way to go there and document it properly. Because the Wildlife Conservation Office on the island, I mean, they probably know that skink exists, but they have no budget. They have no staff. They have no time for it. They're busy documenting fisheries, and that's already taking most of their resources. So I offered my help. They gladly accepted. They seem to be very happy about me helping. But now, yeah, got to find money to do that. True.
I spent a little bit of time in Samoa looking at a moya over there, and they're incredible looking lizards. Speaking of photographers, who's 3 photographers that you really look up to? Who would you recommend to check their work? for our listeners?
I look at Joel. I learned most of what I know technically from him. And he does have some masterclasses. He does have some stuff out there that can help people to do a better job, really. I don't have lots of mentors. But Joel Sartori, I can really tell people to go check out his work, especially where he talks about the backgrounds. I'm going back to it because this is something that not many photographers actually mention. It's good to have this kind of different view on the technicality of having a photo shoot done. Then the number 2 is another bird photographer. He's a broad photographer, wildlife really, but he has a specialty in birds. It's Tim Lehman from US, I think, and he's done beautiful work documenting all species of birds of paradise and documenting their display. He really is a gifted photographer. He does amazing things. He also has a photography course. So yeah, I strongly suggest you check Tim Lehman. And there are 2 French photographers that I look up to on a regular basis. The first one is Frank Deschandol, called Frank Cannon on Instagram. He is a really, really gifted macro photographer. He's very good, and he's photographed tons of stuff in the field. Maybe you even know him, at least know his work. And the other guy I look up to, he's kind of well known, but I'm not sure so many people know him today. He's another French guy called Nathaniel Maury, and he's done his reptile and amphibian encyclopedia. You can see it on the reptile database website. Those wide photos where you have the snake or the reptile from top, bottom, side, close up, ventral, dorsal view, all together on one frame with the name of the species. He's the one who does that, and he has pushed macro photography to a way where hardly any macro photographer has been so far. I mean, technically, he's one of the best macro photographers out there. And these days, he's focusing on super macro, where he actually showed me a frame that he has as a poster behind his desk. He's still heavily into reptiles, of course, but he showed me the photo of the back of a head of a mosquito that he took with his super macro equipment, and he framed it as a poster, and the bigger side of the poster is 1 meter. So can you imagine what he did?
Wow.
I mean, we're almost reaching the physical limits of photography now. Basically, once he mastered that technique, he went back in his garden and he collected lots of tiny things around. And using a microscope, he identified little bugs that we hardly know existed, took photos of them with his super macro equipment, sent that to entomologists, and the entomologists cannot even classify what he sent into families.
Wow.
So they're likely completely new things.
Yeah.
They're like he photographed a macroscopic fly where the antennas are actually protruding from the eyes, from the middle of the eyes. Like,
Wow.
how does that exist? We don't even know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also with the photography he did with reptiles, we uncovered some physical characteristics that no one ever knows about. I mean, did you know, for example, that Cyrtodactylus geckos have little dots on their lips are actually star-shaped?
No.
Yeah, they're star-shaped. They're not round, they're star-shaped. And they're very intricate. I'm breeding horned pit vipers from Vietnam, Protobotrus. And he photographed my adult female, and we did a close-up of the horns. They're actually flesh extensions with 2 scales protruding at the end of the extension, but the horn itself is a flesh extension that has no scales on it, and only at the end 2 scales. This you can only see with super macro photography, and I've never seen any snake having this kind of structure actually. But this we never knew until he photographed it. So with his work, I don't know how many hundreds of scientific publications, most likely. But there's no time. But I wanted to delve into that, but I need another 3 lives to do it, I think. I really want to delve into that because Taiwan beauty rat snake, that's a species everyone knows, and many people keep them at their place. Maybe not in Australia because it's an alien species, but still.
Yeah.
Outside of Australia, many people keep it. And that species, if you look, the whole species, not just the subspecies, but the whole species, if you look at their scales are actually keeled at the end. They're not smooth. And if you look at the end of their scales, there are 2 dots, symmetric to each side of the scale. And they're here on every flank and dorsal scales. No one has any idea what these dots are and why they're here. And you can only see that scale structure from a super macro. Otherwise, you don't see it. It's not visible. But with super macro, we could see that and we're like, oh, what is this? How come it's there? There's lots of possibilities to publish, but Nathaniel himself doesn't have time, and he's not interested in publishing. He's interested in finishing his encyclopedia, and that itself is a work of a lifetime. So we need people to help him publish. I'm trying to do it, but we need more people.
And
So
that's what
yeah,
I'm
these are
checking
the
out when I
photographers.
finish.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
Well, these
Yeah.
are the photographers I'm inspired by. And I'm fortunate to have most of them, except Tim Lehman, who I've never met. But all the others are good friends of mine.
Are there any exciting projects that you have coming up that you can tell our listeners about?
For myself, my next project is really trying to get my ACEE, my pure wildlife thing, funded so that I don't have to depend simply on one client, in that case, National Geographic.
Mm-hmm.
And I can actually choose to have my own targets, not based on what salary I will get from Nat Geo or where we're going with Nat Geo, but based on my own interests. And that will be a life changer, really. So that's my next thing. For example, we talked about Ponape. I'm trying to go back there to actually photograph and study the skink, Ponape skink, and its habitat. That hasn't been done in recent times. I would actually love to go back to Mindanao in Philippines and document this. I've documented the Gonocephalus. It's a tree dragon, a gamete family. I've documented this unknown species of Gonocephalus that's really beautiful. It's the first good photos of it. And we know where it is. We know its habitat. We know some of part of its habitat is protected, but we don't know the extent. And we've only seen one specimen. So we need to document more. It was a male. We need a female now. And we need to find how numerous they are. So all of that is our upcoming projects in the ACEE. No, ACEE basically stands for Animals Conservation, Education, and Expedition. That's how it came about. It's a broad enough frame that will keep me busy for the rest of my life, pretty much. So my next big thing is really having this project be funded so that I can worry about where I'm going to go, how I'm going to get what I'm going to get, and how I'm going to talk about it, rather than, okay, with what money do I go there?
Yeah.
So that will keep me busy for a while.
Have you ever witnessed or experienced misogyny in your career? And in your opinion, what do you think could be done to help stamp it out?
That's a touchy subject. It's also something very prominent in this world today. It's quite a big problem. I mean, the attitude of people against women is quite a big problem, and the place of women in the society and the inequalities, that's all a very, very worrying issue, because it shows how inhumane our behavior can be sometimes. But personally, as a man, I always try to be as respectful as I can, so I haven't had any complaints against me. And I haven't experienced it directly, but at the same time, when you go in countries like Malaysia or Indonesia, where women, if you're part of a Muslim family, have to wear an Islamic veil starting at even 5 years old, when they have almost no free thinking at this age, usually you're not really into religion yet. You're slowly learning. Why would you wear that if you're not even aware of what it means, or it's just because you have to? I don't know if it's misogyny or what. I don't know how it can be classified, but it makes me feel a bit uncomfortable when I see a child that young having to wear religious items. It can be an Islamic veil, but it can be anything else, really. It makes me a little bit uncomfortable because I say, okay, where's the free will there? Aren't we at the point where we're actually spoiling these kids from their youth, from their young years, where they're like completely innocent and just, you know, for them, everything is new. And we're already putting these kids in boxes or constraining them for, I don't know if there's a good reason for that really at that age. When you have your own will, if you want to wear an Islamic veil or a kippah or a cross or whatever, you're very welcome. I have no problem with it at all. I mean, why would I be anyone to judge? But when I see that, it kind of makes me a bit uncomfortable, because I wouldn't like to be constrained at that age. I wouldn't like to already be constrained. But besides that, and besides people just behaving like rude people or morons or behaving bad with women or whatever, I haven't been exposed to that, because in conservation and in photography, there are already enough women who have paved the way for other women that this is no longer a really big issue. I mean, when you look at conservation, Jane Goodall, Diane Fossey, all these people, I mean, they're women, and they're inspiring men and women around the world. may they be alive or dead. So these people have paved the way and have suffered probably for other women and other people to shine today. So we don't have that. So there's less of this problem in conservation. But in photography, I don't know enough, but there are lots of good women photographers out there for sure who do a wonderful job. The only other instance I think of was with my wife. We went to Indonesia, and immigration, we decided to go each one. I mean, why would she come with me? She's grown up. She can face immigration alone, and so can I. So we just went our separate lanes so that I would go faster. For me, it was done in like 1 minute. The guy glanced at me and typed in information, stamped my passport, goodbye, thank you. My wife was held up, and the guy was absolutely horrible with her. And she said, okay, why are you here? Why you come to Indonesia alone? Where's your husband? And that was clear misogyny. But he was the immigration guy. At some point, my wife told me, please come, I'm in trouble. So I came, and immediately when I came, the guy was like, oh, hello, sir. Are you her husband? Okay, for sure. Stamp. Goodbye. Thank you. Have a nice day. My wife was alone. He was giving her a really hard time. So for me, that's clear misogyny. That's my take on it. As the rule, I'm trying to always be very respectful and very tolerant of everything. When I'm disturbed by something, I will usually try not to voice it because I understand I might hurt people's feeling. But I don't tolerate disrespect. Treat people the way you want to be treated.
Definitely.
You said before that you had Protobothrops cornutus. What other species of reptile do you keep?
Mostly vipers. I keep Protobothrops cornutus. I keep and I breed already for 3 years in a row. I have 6 babies, I think, right now. They're still in the cage with the mother, so I didn't count them yet. I leave them be for now. They was just born a week ago. And my snakes do all the work by themselves. I don't incubate artificially anything. So the incubation was done by the female in her cage. I'm just monitoring so that everything's fine, monitoring the humidity, monitoring the heat, monitoring if the female is eating, if she feels good. But all the incubation is done by the snake, definitely, not by me. So that's why I don't know yet how many babies I have, because I haven't disturbed her for now. I just fed her once. I have white-lipped pit viper, just got babies, albino babies.
Oh, nice.
I also have rhino vipers. I have Taylor's skuntail, Tortuga Island rattlesnakes. I have lance-headed rattlesnakes from Mexico, hoping to get breeding of them this year.
Is it Polystictus?
Yeah, Polystictus, exactly. Yeah, I have 2 adult pairs of them, and that's their first breeding year, so I'm crossing fingers. And one of my females seems to be gravid, so we'll see. And I have 3 species from the Ovophis genus. I have Okinawensis, Tonkinensis, and Makazayazaya.
Fantastic.
You've made us very jealous.
Oh, well, you're welcome anytime to check them out when you're in Europe. They're waiting for you here.
We're hoping to come back 25, but we have a dog with separation issues, so we're not entirely sure how that's going to go. So,
well, let me know if you come back. You're more than welcome.
Oh, thank you. We will.
Good.
So we do a little segment called 60 Seconds Under the Basking Spot. Are you ready, Pierre?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Do you prefer the window or the aisle seat?
Window.
Vintage or new?
Vintage, definitely.
Do you prefer to stay in a hotel or do you prefer to camp?
Hotel.
Android or Apple?
Apple.
Comedy or horror movie?
Both.
4-wheel drive or sports car?
4-wheel.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Reptiles or amphibians?
Both.
Do you prefer to read the book or see the movie?
Read the book.
Are you a risk taker or are you conservative?
Oh, risk taker, definitely.
Do you prefer to drive a manual or an automatic?
Manual, for sure. I hate automatic.
Do you prefer to have a night in or a night out?
Home.
Store-bought or handmade?
Handmade, if possible.
Tidy or messy?
Messy.
Are you an optimist or a realist?
I try to be optimist, but I'm way too realistic, unfortunately.
And finally, does pineapple go on a pizza?
Nope, not for me.
Oh,
For other people, yeah, but for me, nope. I don't like pineapple on pizza. But actually, the only pizza I like is 4 cheese, so no pineapple on cheese. Sorry.
fair enough.
Definitely not. No.
Yeah, quattro formaggi pizza is the rule for me.
Fantastic.
There's no spot for pineapple on that pizza.
What's the one takeaway that you would like the audience to get from this episode, Pierre?
There are things that I see today that irritate me a little bit. Something that I'm very, very sensitive is animal welfare. And what I mean by animal welfare, it's not only how good we keep animals, and especially, but it's also not harassing them. And I see so many people today going in the field and in the name of herpetology or whatever, literally harassing wildlife, like picking everything up, everything they can, hooking everything up, showing it to the camera, bragging, and for some people even going further, like catching it violently, throwing it around, goofying with it. I hate it. I really hate it. When you're a scientist, like a herpetologist, and you have to work in the field because it's your mission, you have this project that you're running and you have a scientific purpose where you have to collect samples or analyze things, I completely understand that you have to go through that process of capturing animals. And I've actually taken part into real field work from university teachers in Taiwan in particular. And that teacher is actually coming to visit me next month. And we're going to do work with my snakes as well. So this I can totally support and I understand. But these days, you see all kinds of guys just handling wildlife in the wild without permits. You see all kinds of animals being super scared or exhibiting all kinds of stress behavior and all kinds of handling. And I just wish to tell them that treat people the way you be treated, the way you expect to be treated also applies to animals. It applies to everything. You have to be respectful. Yeah, okay, it's going to look good on Instagram and people are going to praise you because you found this or that and because you've been handling this or that. But the truth is, you're disrespecting wildlife when you do that. Wildlife is meant to be left alone. It's better when we leave it alone. That doesn't mean don't get close to it. If the animal allows it, why not? But just try not to be invasive. Like try to photograph an animal. I mean, I never handle an animal when I'm photographing it. Never. It's not going to happen. And sometimes I just don't get my shot because the animal doesn't want to cooperate and I'm fine with it. And I just let the animal go. And it will be for next time. And yeah, of course, you wasted time, you wasted money. But for me, leaving an animal alone and respecting it and respecting the animal's will not to be handled is much more important to me than making sure that I got this or that I'm going to be featured on Instagram because I captured this snake or whatever. So I have to, this is what I try to be careful. And this is what I hope people will remember is think of respecting the animal just as you expect to be respected. I mean, I'm not happy if a total stranger wakes me up and shakes me in the middle of the night. I'm not going to be happy about it. And I think the wildlife is not going to be happy either about it. So that's why I don't do it. Yeah, of course, there's no picture of me bare-chested, showing my huge, mighty muscles together with a king cobra in the wild. But there doesn't need to be. I really hope that people will understand that wildlife should be left alone when there's no need to bother it. And that's the best respect and the best message you can convey is that's actually is how we got so much wildlife in trouble today because we don't respect the habitat, because we believe we own it, because we believe that wildlife and nature is just something disposable or something we can use. Well, that's how we get all these animals in trouble. That's an extension of that. So I strongly wish that people, especially all these young people who see documentaries where you see people jumping on animals or whatever, would just take a step back and say, is this really ethical? Is this really a good thing? Is this what we need to do to convey the message that we need to protect and respect these animals? Personally, I'm not so sure. So that's why I'm trying to advocate for the least amount of handling possible, and most of the time, no handling at all. And the animal looks much more relaxed. And at the end, you get back with a better feeling, like the feeling that I've actually, it's like, this is one of the main teachings when you're dealing with shamanic practices, especially healing. And they will tell you, leave no trace. That's the most important thing when you're into shamanic arts. You have to leave no trace behind you. People don't have to know that you were here. If people know that you were here because you left a mess, then that's bad. You didn't do a good job.
Yeah.
And for me, that's the same when you do wildlife photography. If you're leaving the animal is super stressed, that means you did a lousy job. So, yeah, that's my take. It's not a fun take, but I think it has to be addressed at some point.
No, I think it's a very good position to have. We've got a listener question. We put an opportunity for our listeners to comment on Facebook if they had any questions, and Manny Walsh has got the following question. I've always wondered if there are many venomous keepers in France, and if so, is it difficult to import venomous snakes into France, or are they quite strict, or is it fairly easy if you've just got the right paperwork, you can get what you want to keep?
There's a big network of keepers in France for sure. The thing is, keeping venomous reptiles in France is subject to regulation, and you can only keep it if you have the proper permits. And the permits are not easy to obtain. So there are some illegal keepers out there, but they're putting themselves at risk. And if they get caught, they will be in really bad trouble. They can go to jail for that.
Yep.
But there are some legal keepers, which I'm part of, and going through the process to get the permits, it's a 2-step permit. It's quite a hassle, I have to say, but it's worth it if you're really passionate about this, and you will end up succeeding. The first step is basically a knowledge test where you will have to prove in front of people through a big application with paperwork and an interview that you actually know what you're talking about, that you know about the animals you want to keep, that you've been trained, and they will acknowledge that you are capable of keeping it. So that's the first step. And then the second step is a security and how you call that, terrarium installation checkup. Yeah, basically they will test safety of your protocols, of your setups, so that you're capable of keeping that species, and now we're allowing you to keep it with this number of specimens.
Yep.
It's pretty restrictive, but at the same time, it does give you quite a bit of freedom, especially when you can prove, like I did, that I'm able to keep pretty much any member of the viperiid family.
Yep.
So I have an authorization to keep every vipers that I want. Every pit vipers, rattlesnakes, vipers, I can keep.
Yep.
But I have a limited number. Well, limited, not really that limited because it's a big number because I have a big snake room. I can keep up to 80 specimens.
Yep.
But 80 specimens, that includes all the juveniles. So if I have one puff adder giving birth, I don't have puff adders in my collection at the moment, but if I have one puff adder giving birth, I might explode this number already.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful and you have to manage your collection. So that's number one thing. Now, importing wild animals, that's a different thing because in Europe, you can import wild animals. Some countries have regulations that are a little bit looser, a bit easier to go around than other countries. In France, it's really difficult, but you can work with Czech Republic or other countries where wildlife imports are easier to make and then get the species to France. Because once the species is in the European Union, as long as you have the proper paperwork, it can travel anywhere within the European Union.
So you're able to.
So when I go to Ham Expo, for example, when I go to Ham or Houten Expo, for example, to pick up a snake, I just do the proper paperwork, which takes me 5 minutes, and then I can bring that snake back home. It's no problem. As long as it's part of the perimeter of my keeping authorization. But if you want to import wild specimen, then it's quite difficult. Usually in France, it doesn't work very well, especially if you're a private person. If you're a zoo or if you're a public institution, you might get the permits, but it's not so easy.
Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to say before we close out?
Well, I mean, we talked about respect, so I guess I don't have to bring this one again to the table. But respect people, respect wildlife. People today talk about conservation as if it's only animals and nature. But conservation is about human as well. If you don't work with humans, if you don't respect humans, if you don't love your human condition, how can you love anything else? How can you love animals? How can you do proper work, really? You have to understand the fact that if you want to work in conservation, you have first to understand humans, and then you can understand wildlife. And then you can understand how you can make the two cohabitate, can make the two live together. That's very important. It's really, really important. And the other thing is, for young kids out there, if there's anybody who's still struggling to find his own way or her own way to do things, Jim Carrey phrased it perfectly in a speech that he did for university not so long ago, is there's only two pathways that you can take, is you love or fear. And if you choose love, you won't have a single bad day in your life, really, because you just allow yourself to go for your dreams. And I love this little quote from a guy who said, I think it was a guy who said, nobody told me this was impossible, so I actually did it.
That's a ripper.
I think this is a beautiful message because at the end, of course, not everything is possible. But within the realm of the possible, we still have lots to do and we still have lots to achieve and more than enough to make lots of people on this planet very happy. So I just want to tell them that choose love, choose the path of love, choose the path of passion, and don't let anyone keep you from achieving your dreams. If people come to you and say, dream fast, because when you become older, then reality will catch up with you. But actually, for myself, I strayed away from reality. I followed my dream and I made it come true.
So where can our listeners find you if they wanted to ask you further questions about some of the things we've spoken about today?
I'm mostly reachable on my social networks, especially Instagram.
Yep.
Instagram is where I'm posting the most. Facebook, I'm not so active, but Instagram, my Instagram is Pierre Wildlife, all attached, _OFF for official. So Pierre Wildlife _OFF. That's my Instagram. You will recognize easily because the profile picture is a snake logo.
Beautiful.
That has the shape of a P.
Beautiful.
It's a viper with the shape of a P. So you can find me there and Pierre Wildlife, and I answer every message as much as I can. And I post everything about my trips, my photos, all the updates, everything is there. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you have any question. I'll be happy to answer it, or any proposals for partnerships or whatever. I'm always open for anything. I can't say yes to everything, but at least I consider everything.
Fantastic. We'll make sure that your details are in the show notes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for having me, by the way. I loved it. It's been a great time.
It's been awesome to catch up, Pierre. It's been a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Better late than never.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's try not to wait 3 years before catching up again.
100%. 100%.
Definitely. Thanks for listening to the Cold-Blooded Contributions podcast. A massive thank you to our guest, Pierre. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. Usually we'll be releasing our podcast monthly, so make sure you follow us so you don't miss out on an episode. Give the Cold-Blooded Contributions podcast a like on Facebook so you don't miss any updates, giveaways, or guest announcements. The links discussed in today's podcast will be in the show notes. Always remember to trust your creativity. It's intelligence having fun.